Ölgen ko'chalarda umid uzma aziz xalqim, umid uzma ey ana yurt. Biz atlandık bu kurashga, o yıl taştak uyuşup. Allah berse bu nusretni, bizgilerimiz sep bulup, zalimlarni yığlatgudek, Oğuz gibi küçlük bulup, lepildeydi asminanda, göz çaknetip şu günü, ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım, ey ana makam, ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to another special episode on Talk is Turkestan with a very special guest. As you guys know, since last month, especially Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Captive Nations Coalition, part of the Committee on Present Danger China. The Captive Nations Coalition is made up of individuals from communities that are and have been taken over by the CCP, like Southern Mongolia, East Turkestan, Tibet, and pretty much everyone in China, especially Hong Kong and even Falun Gong practitioners. Joining me today is Hoon Kim, the director of the Captive Nations Coalition, and he's going to talk about the work that he does and how he's standing up to the CCP. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Hoon. How are you today?
How are you? Good, how are you?
I'm very well. Hopefully I did justice to you with that introduction.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah.
So let's get straight into it. What is the Captive Nations Coalition?
So the Captive Nations Coalition, as you have described actually very beautifully, is that we are a coalition made up of folks from communities that have been taken over by the Chinese Communist Party. Mainly, we call it nations because we firmly believe that these places are countries that are under occupations right now. So mainly East Turkestan, obviously, and Tibet, Southern Mongolia, and really just all of China in general as well. We believe that by calling it captive nations, we are not only doing the proper justice as a world community for these people that have been repressed by the CCP, but really getting the truth out there as much as possible. So that's the purpose of the Captive Nations Coalition. We're also made up of individuals like myself who are global citizens, mainly from the United States and really pretty much from anywhere around the world that believe in the freedom of these captive communities under the Chinese Communist Party.
The State Department under the previous administration and Mike Pompeo had broken or has broken the decades of US policy in being openly critical of the Chinese Communist Party's brutal oppression of various groups, such as you mentioned, the Uyghurs, Tibetans, Southern Mongolians, and others. Do you see this continue under the new administration under Biden?
Well, we shall have to see at this point. But at this point, also, we can only talk about what we hope for, right? But I would like to just share a little bit about the significance of the designation of genocide, actually, and really all of the actions that's been taken by the previous administration and the importance of that. Now, in terms of the designation of genocide, it is significant because it sets a precedence for the current administration, as well as the world communities to know and to accept the fact that it definitely is a genocide. And by designating it as a genocide, we can also pretty much designate the CCP for what it really is, as a transnational criminal organization. But before I get into that a lot more, I said that we can only hope for it, but let me take that back a little bit. I think we can this is a time to accept a few things as a global members of society. And one of them is the fact that the conventional way of doing business with China in all aspects, whether politically, financially, or whatever it may be, is over. And its mannerisms and how it's spreading its repression across the world, being really unfolded in the last year or so. And so with all of that in mind, I think it would be logical for many of us to expect that any administration, be it the United States or anywhere around the world, to be a lot more aggressive towards the Chinese Communist Party, and that accept the fact that there is no going back in terms of carrying on with business as usual, which was pretty much letting them win on every front.
You sort of just mentioned something really important. The Captive Nations Coalition is working towards getting countries to recognize China as a criminal organization. I've in the past called them a terrorist organization. Could you tell us about how you are going about getting this label for them to be labeled as a criminal organization?
Right. So I think I should start by telling your viewers that we have personally met with the former Secretary Mike Pompeo and the significance behind that. Now, a month before the designation of genocide, myself and including the leadership of the Committee on Present Danger China, Frank Gaffney, Didi Laugesen, and members of the Captive Nations Coalition as representatives of captive nations, right? That's the key word. From East Turkestan, Tibet, Southern Mongolia, every single one of them who were actually born and raised there, mind you. And we even had a Hong Kong American there, and then someone from Kazakhstan as well, who to really represent the fact that the practice that the CCP that has been the practice of repression by the CCP is spreading, and we wanted to really symbolize that during the meeting. And so we've met with Secretary Mike Pompeo, and he gave each member of the Captive Nations Coalition sort of like an independent voice to really say what they wanted to say, right? And it was extremely inspirational. It was extremely inspirational because he not only sympathized, which is a sort of like the attitude that we've been seeing from a lot of officials, but with no action, unfortunately. But he also noted the significance and the importance of recognizing the Chinese Communist Party for what it is, which is a threat to the rest of the world, right? And so after the meeting, especially going back to our representative from East Turkestan, I've never felt so, I would say, relieved, but so heartwarmed in my entire life, during that meeting, because before we left the meeting itself, I've actually had a chance to overhear a conversation between our sister Kalba Nurgeni, who was representing East Turkestan, with Secretary Mike Pompeo. And this was after she explained to him that her sister recently was arrested and was sentenced to 17 years. Well, she was detained in concentration camps, of course, but she was recently sentenced to 17 years, 10 years for having a Quran, and I think 7 years for praying for her father after he passed away a couple of years ago. And so basically, just to wrap it up on that regard, Secretary Pompeo, told her just very sincerely, my wife and I will be praying for you. And lo and behold, a month afterwards, I don't know if that was the main reason. I'm pretty sure it was not, but it was one of the reasons that are out there. Before he left office, he designated what's happening in East Turkestan as a genocide. So those are the things that we are doing. Those are the steps that are being taken in order to recognize CCP for what it is, a transnational criminal organization. And the designation of the genocide itself is a major step in order to achieve that. But we also believe that it shouldn't only be the action of the administration, but it should be backed up by general society.
It's amazing the work that you're doing, but let's just take a step back a bit and let's hear your story. If I'm not mistaken, you were, I don't know if you would call yourself a pro-CCP, but you definitely weren't anti-CCP. How did you get to this stage?
Well, I think the best word to use it is in this regard is enlightenment, really. And I say enlightenment because before I became what I am today, until I guess the end of high school, I was so enamored by everything about China in general, right? Like, I was an avid reader of the CCTV and its propaganda. I was watching their TV shows, and in the Beijing Olympics, there are, before they raised the flag, which was really cool. I mean, the fact that they've had all this like duck, the duck marches and everything was just so perfectly in line. And there was a group of children dressed in different ethnic garments or whatever it may be, carrying the Chinese flag, right? And they're all smiling, happy, right? And this was in addition to, a lot of the harmonious ethnic, relations that China has been promoting, right? And so I thought that China was going to be the answer to the world. I thought that China was going to be the model for the world, for all of us to follow, because look, I mean, everyone's happy there. It seems like they didn't have a history like the West or whatever it may be, right? But then I looked over a crucial factor, which is to simply talk to those people that has been oppressed by the CCP, and also consider those people who have been oppressed by the CCP as just the propaganda tools, right, by the West or whatever it may be, right? So I guess talking to these folks, but also at the same time actually doing my research made a huge difference. And even just getting here today as an avid supporter of the people of East Turkestan, whether it be Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, or whatever it may be, I began to develop this feeling or this connection with everybody that I'm working with, truly as a brother. And I say this because one simple question came into my mind as I was initially starting my journey. I asked myself, what if this was my mother, my sister, or my cousin or my father, right? And I thought about that, and I said to myself, I would feel terrible if any of these things happen to any of my family members or to any of my close friends. And so that was part of my enlightenment experience. And even just to getting here, I was extremely also humbled by the courage and really the great hospitality that comes out of this genuine heart of these people that really changed my mind, and that really changed my heart into really just doing the right thing, or trying to do the right thing all the time.
Wow. This brings me to my next question, which is how the Captive Nations Coalition is raising awareness about Chinese oppression so that others can be, quote unquote, be enlightened like you.
Well, I think in terms of being enlightened, right, the tools are already out there, right? The tools are already out there for everyone to get out of this pro-CCP mindset if they're in one right now. But also, as the Committee on Present Danger China and with the Captive Nations Coalition, I think the best word to use in this case is fighting on, right? And I say fighting on because we're fighting a monster that's been sort of groomed by, let's be honest here, by all of us, with our ignorance, with our tolerance of its growth for many, many years, our complacency to a certain degree, right? And so we're trying to address all of those factors. And one of those factors is targeting the financial aspect of it, right? What's funneling them to be what they are, and really get people to get out of this mindset that if you engage with them, if you engage with them economically, they'll somehow liberalize, which is probably one of the biggest lies that we face as a society, right? but also, as you pointed out, reflecting on my enlightenment journey, the leadership of the CPDC, or the Committee on Present Danger China, really brought on a marvelous idea, which is getting the testimonies and the personal stories of those that's been affected by the Chinese Communist Party, and really serve as a warning to all of us in the free society of what's to come, even for us, right? And so, in order to protect not only us, but really at the global society, getting people to the point of understanding that by standing with the people of East Turkestan or Tibet or Southern Mongolia or everyone that's oppressed in China or Hong Kong, we are fighting for the literal survival of humanity. We're also doing justice for all those who's been oppressed. And we're also doing something that's morally right. And we are raising awareness in that regard, but we're also getting people to really act as much as they can these days.
I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the various Uyghur organizations out there, even Talk East Turkestan. With the work that you've been doing, have you grabbed the attention of the CCP? And what I mean by is certain Uyghur organizations are labeled by the CCP as terrorists or terrorist groups. Have you sort of faced that kind of backlash or sort of revolt from the CCP at all?
Well, our organization is fairly new.
Right.
Let me just point that out. But also, I think we haven't had a badge of honor, as I would say, being labeled as a terrorist group or a threat to the CCP. In that regard, I really thank the CCP because, look, by calling us a terrorist organization or a threat to China, you've pretty much given us the title of righteous fighters, right? In that sense. So, that's great. But we hope to get onto that stage. We hope to get onto a stage of them naming us on their national state television. I would love to be called a traitor by their government. We're actually looking forward to that day. But also, I think it's only right to say that if you've been doing the right thing, those things will come naturally. So we haven't received that as far as I know. But it wouldn't surprise me though if they have a file on me or everybody in our committee and designate us as a threat of some sort. But as of now, nothing public has come out.
What seems to worry me and others, especially when I'm talking to Uyghurs, after all these reports, I'm sure you've read that BBC report on the systematic rape that is going on, where another realm of these concentration camps is that the CCP have turned them into essentially brothels, where people in plain clothes are paying money to go and pick whatever women they want to be with, essentially, to rape. And even after all that, I still hear, and I'm sure you've heard, countries wanting to balance human rights, genocide with diplomacy and trade. Do you think we will see a change?
Absolutely. I think also we're already seeing a change because look, you can't base an opinion of a country just with the voices of the government, right? Because look, when I actually held the first Uyghur event with the student group at the University of Rochester, I've seen all sorts of faces in the crowd. Majority of them actually international students. We even had a few from China to come in and listen to our sisters who's been from East Turkestan that were sharing what has happened to their family members. And it really gave me hope at that time. Because at the end of the day, it's not the government's voices that will make the most difference. It's the voices of the people, right? Whether they be from Turkey, Uzbekistan, Canada, Mexico, wherever it may be, right? But also, after this pandemic, let's just step back a little bit, right? And then just talk about some of the frustrations that the global society has been facing because of China. I think it's very clear that countries, especially those who are in the Belt and Road Initiative nations, right, are feeling the frustration of China literally taking over their sovereignty, taking away their national resources, taking away, you know, a huge part of their nation, right? Claiming this, I think the CCP claimed that 40% of Tajikistan is actually a Chinese territory historically, right? And just on a side note, you know, and by that logic, every country in the world is part of China because, hey, you know, some emperor in the past, mentioned it or something like that, right? And so this is the type of attitude that we're seeing, and we're also seeing a weaponization of different factors by the CCP. One of which, as I mentioned, is history. The other thing is a weaponization of, a lot of people actually don't know this, is actually friendly relations. This is what we're seeing with the Belt and Road Initiative, and multiple countries around the world, communities around the world are just getting not only extremely concerned, but just being flat out angry at the CCP. Right? You talk to folks from Sri Lanka, you talk to folks from different parts of Central Asia, Kazakhstan. You talk to folks even from those from West Africa or East Africa. They're telling me they're constantly making complaints that, look, the Chinese are taking over. The Chinese are not living up to their promises, but asking us to pay back this giant loan that they gave us, and targeting our own corrupt politicians, right? So at the end of the day, we see that it's the people that are paying the ultimate price for the takeover of their land, right? And this is why the role of the captive nations is becoming a lot more important globally. The reason is because a lot of these countries are actually now seeing that whatever is happening to them has already happened to countries like East Turkestan, Tibet, and Southern Mongolia. And I think as a supporter for the people of East Turkestan, this is actually one of the major ways in order to wake up the world, that if you do not act properly, you will end up like East Turkestan. You will end up like Tibet or Southern Mongolia, right? And and with everything that you've just mentioned, the systematic rape, I'm going to go as far as to say an attempt to exterminate a group of people, right? And I'm also going to say that there is a huge presence of Han supremacism, right? And I'm not saying all Chinese people are like that, but there is a push of Han supremacism by the Chinese Communist Party, and we have to accept it for what it is. We have to recognize it for what it is, right? And so, with all of that in mind, though, people need to understand those are only a part of what's driving the CCP for doing what they're doing. We heard from our sister Tursane, right? And there's Mihir Gultursan and Zumrat Daoud and Sargo Gulbe, everybody, right? All these sisters are getting just basically destroyed, and mind you, these are the people that represent the entire systematic oppression that's been given upon these people. So it shouldn't surprise us for those who has been fighting for this issue, but also this is a warning to the rest of society that whatever we have seen in being done in places like East Turkestan can be repeated all over the world. So that is not only gaining sympathy at this point, but I see actually the global society standing up, not too distant future, because people are already standing up. And with the I don't know what's happening with the mainstream media, but it's not being covered as much. But you can silence people only to a certain extent, right? And these are the people that matter the most.
So now a question about China's soft power, and also on social media. You will notice that when you post something about this, and even once this video comes up, you will get a lot of, say, trolls attacking, and a lot of people buying what those trolls do. And obviously China doesn't spend that money on the 50-cent social media army for nothing. So what do you say to those that say that organizations like Captive Nations and others are merely propped up by the West, or quote unquote the CIA, to dismantle or cause rifts within China, and that the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and others are used by Western governments so that they can get 5 to 10% extra in their trade deals?
Well, I think that just shows the pathetic attitude by the Chinese Communist Party itself. I mean, think about it. If you look at, I want your viewers to understand something. If you look at the types of things that these trolls say all the time, they're always talking about the same exact thing, right? Oh, if you criticize China, you must be working for the CIA. If you criticize China, oh, you must be attacking our financial sector, just trying to cause rifts in society or whatever. And here's the thing. Every country has an agenda. Every single country does. But here's the difference between the place that we live in, right, and places that they live in. In the place that they live in, right, you have to follow a certain quota under the name of national security, or the keeping country as one, right, whatever that may be. So henceforth, the voice of the government becomes basically the voice of God. Right, the driving force behind the lives of everyone that's living out there, whether they realize it or not. On the flip side, though, we are living in a society where you can actually criticize the government and criticize every as we see fit, and we have the right to make the necessary changes as we see fit, right? And so for them to say something like, "Oh, well, you're working for the CIA," or et cetera, that just shows all of us that they don't understand what a free society looks like, right? And also at the same time, I know that people are afraid, and people are, quite frankly, getting tired of these online trolls. I personally have been described as a nightmare for the CCP trolls online. The reason is because of this, because sometimes. I think it's important to realize that we in the West and the rest of the world, we can't be on the defensive anymore. See, that's part of the problem. We've been trying to keep our quote unquote principles, right, of trying to be the calm people, try to be the people with reason, and we really should be, and that should never be abandoned. But also at the same time, you could be a bit aggressive too and play them in their own game. So. That's exactly what, being me, that's exactly what I did, So I started a challenge. I actually got blocked by more online trolls than probably anybody else, because I started this challenge that, that every time they post something, I post, a picture of Xi Jinping with the Winnie the Pooh, right, for example, and say, let's all of us enjoy the benefits of free society, and let it be known that even the online trolls are enjoying, the things that we enjoy. Thank you for inspiring us to criticize the Xi Jinping, right? That got me blocked by so many of these online trolls on Twitter, and I even started a challenge that every time they post something, we would post 10 more posts, about anti-CCP. So stuff like that we could definitely play in their games, and also going back to your original question. In terms of the existence of the captive nations itself. Look, it was in the Soviet times, the places like the United States and elsewhere around the world were havens for people of these captive nations within the Soviet Union to make their voice, right? To talk about independence, to talk about a genuine freedom, and really, as long as the country provides the rights for them to, to say what they want to say, who cares what, where it is, right? It can be in the West, it could be in the middle of Tanzania, right? It could be, somewhere in Malaysia. It doesn't matter, right? And so that's something that they need to realize, and really, whenever they say whatever they say, we're just simply looking at, we are just simply looking at the overall pathetic attitude by the CCP, and really people shouldn't take any heed to that, And also, I would also like to tell your viewers that the CCP trolls have no creativity whatsoever, because they have to keep to a certain guideline. So you shouldn't really worry about them.
So you're saying we should follow or take a page out of China's wolf warrior diplomacy handbook?
No, well, not really, because look, the wolf warrior diplomacy is a failed diplomacy. It's a very pathetic way of dealing with things. What I am saying is that we can actually be on the offensive as well, fighting against them, and showing them that we mean business, right? We are not going to be on the offensive anymore, right? By keeping to our principles at the same time. I'm also not advocating violence. All I'm saying is call them out for what they are.
Yeah.
a bunch of criminals and really treat them as such.
Okay, sort of the last question, and hopefully, if there's anything else that you want to add, please do so as well. What do you advise people to do to spread the awareness and the danger of this criminal organization?
So spreading awareness can come in many forms. One of the ways is by constantly talking about it with those around you, right? And encouraging everyone to do their research. But also, I would like to ask everyone to just simply reach out to these organizations that are working with communities like these, right? I remember we just recently talked to some folks, some Uyghurs folks in Turkey, and the amount of sadness that they're feeling, the amount of, I would say, helplessness and loneliness to a point because of the lack of more support by the community. It's just the global community. It's staggering. I think we can start by letting them know that they are not alone. We can also start by letting them know that we are on the offensive now, and that we will not take crap from the CCP anymore, but really fight on. And we can also let everyone know, not just the Uyghurs, but the Tibetans, the Southern Mongolians, and to the rest of people in China that are fighting against the CCP, that the global society is in fact behind them, no matter what these world governments say. Right, and one thing that we can do as one of our offensive measures is let's be creative, right? So one of the things that I did last year, I personally did last year, and would like to I encourage all of your viewers to do, is that Ramadan is coming up, right? For example, right, a large portion of people of East Turkestan are Muslim, right? So what I did last year was, during the pandemic, I couldn't cook iftar meals for a lot of people, but what I did was I cooked a bunch of small meals for our Muslim friends across my town, and with the message that says, please pray and support the people of East Turkestan, right? And just deliver that. And really, I'm not a Muslim, but this is a great way to stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters, but also at the same time get everyone together, right, united together, to stand for people that are truly oppressed, and even in and really live out this one principle of Ramadan, where you act out of charity, right? And so this year I'm going to be doing the same exact thing. I would encourage everyone, whether you're Muslim or not, to do that. But also, on a final note, I would like to say, please visit the presentdangerchina.org. It's a website of the Committee on Present Danger China. We're actually going to be developing a special section for the Captive Nations Coalition, and we will name the 3 countries that are there: East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia, and Tibet. And I think it's now high time for us to say that this is no longer just a simple human rights issue. People have to now look towards these seriousness, really, with all seriousness, the importance of recognizing nationhood for these places. Because look, if you do not have a level of independence to a point, there's no guarantee of human rights. There is no guarantee of total freedom. Hong Kong tried to work that out with China, it failed. Tibet tried to work that out with China, it failed, right? And so on and so forth. So CCP is not the type of quote unquote government that keeps its promises. It doesn't, right? We're looking at an entity that just is built on complete lies and a crime. So I think by recognizing all of that, we are going to be taking a major step in designating them officially for what they are. And I would encourage everyone to keep speaking out, to keep talking about this in their communities, but also be creative, right? Like the ones that I just described. That's something that everyone can do, and create a stronger community at the same time. And because look, look at what's happened to these captive nations. These captive nations were taken over partly also because of the fact that they were lied to. They were they were given all these benefits, right? And the CCP also created factions among these nations before they were completely taken over. We have to tell the CCP that that's not going to help. That's not going to work with us, and that people of these captive nations are already all united, and they are striving to be united for the future, and so they should be scared. So that's what we should be all doing, and please support us in our work as much as possible, and we will let everyone know of the progress that we will be making in the near future.
I want to finish on a lighter note. I just want to hear the story behind this picture. So basically the story being like, where did you get the hat from, and just to finish on a lighter note.
Sure. So that dopa was actually given to me last year during my trip to Virginia, where there's a huge number of Uyghur community is based in, and I was actually staying with a very good dear brother of mine after visiting the community, and I previous to that I was thinking, and I asked the community members, hey, do you know where I could get a dopa for myself? It looks very beautiful, and I would like to just keep it as a reminder for myself of what I'm fighting for, right? And this brother actually came and said, hey, give me an hour, right? And he comes back with this dopa from the community center, and he got all of his friends in front of me and said, on behalf of the Uyghur people, for people of East Turkestan, we would like to give you this hat. And that was also given to me because what a picture of me was circling around the Uyghur community circles of where I painted a huge flag of East Turkestan in 2019 in the tunnels of my university, and that just went pretty much viral. And again, there's a huge story behind that. The Chinese Students and Scholars Association, they painted over it, saying that this is propaganda afterwards, and so on and so forth. And it became a huge issue back then. But it really that picture that you just showed, it really just symbolizes. I would like it to symbolize the fact that look, at the end of the day, the fight for East Turkestan is not just a fight for the people of East Turkestan. It's a fight for all of us. Right. And the moment every single one of us recognize that, and to really genuinely connect with the people, East Turkestan, that's when we actually win the fight. And fortunately enough, and unfortunately enough for the CCP, we're the one that's winning right now. So, and the day of victory is going to come.
Guys, you've seen the website. Make sure you visit Present Danger China for more information. Follow the work on the Captive Nations Coalition. Follow Hoon Kim as well. We hope to have him back on. Hopefully, he continues his fight, as he said. Obviously, not a physical one. Everyone knows what we mean when we say we want to fight against the CCP, against this criminal organization. Don't log off, Hoon Kim. I've got a few questions after the show. I'm just going to round out the show now. Brothers and sisters, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ümit üzme aziz halqim, ümit üzme ey ana yol. Biz atlandık bu küreşke, o yıl taştek uyuşup. Allah verse bu nusretni, bizgilerimiz sep-sep bulur.